Hi, what we're going to talk about today is experimental probability. That means the probability that we gather about something based on some experiments that we've run. Okay? So let's look at a computer program that shows us tossing a coin a few times so we can talk about some of the language that's related to it. So this program is going to simulate me tossing a coin 10 times. Okay? So when I press toss, it's going to actually toss a coin 10 times and show me the results. So there's my 10 results, and here it shows that the number of heads was 3 out of 10 tosses, and the number of tails was 7 out of 10 tosses. So now let's look at some of the words that we need in order to talk about this. So in experimental probability, we need to be familiar with some language. Trial means one attempt of an experiment. So in our case, one toss of a coin, that's one trial. Outcomes or events are what results from those trials or what could result. So in our case, that would be heads or tails. Those are the possible results, also called the outcomes or events. Okay? A trial can be either successful or unsuccessful. Successful trials are what we want to happen. So for example, if we're looking for the probability of heads, successful trials would be heads. Unsuccessful trials would be tails. And finally, experimental probability can be calculated by finding the number of successful trials divided by the number of total trials. So the probability of success is the number of successful trials divided by the number of total trials. So now let's look back at our example to find the probability of heads occurring. So since we're trying to find the probability of heads occurring, I want to consider heads as my successful outcome. So that's my successful outcome. So the number of successful outcomes was the number of times that heads occurred, and that was 3. And the total number of outcomes was the total number of times that we did the trial, and that's 10. Okay? So that would make the experimental probability of heads 3 over 10. So I want to quickly remind you that I can write my final answer one of 3 ways. Okay? So the probability of heads was, remember, 3 heads over 10 outcomes. That's one way to write it. That's fractions. I can also put that in my calculator, do 3 divided by 10, and get 0.3. That's the other way of writing it. I can also then multiply that by 100 on my calculator and get the fact that it's 30%. Okay? So 3 different ways of writing probabilities. All right? So that's it for experimental probabilities, and now we can get to work.